Yeah.
Everybody hear that?
Closer. Okay. It will not let me connect
To the internet?
to the internet or to, it tells me Butte County Association of Governments doesn't exist.
Oh.
Can't reach this page.
Lance is gonna blame
I'm
you.
already-
It's fine. Well, I Cheryl sent me home.
Is that the only one?
So sorry.
I heard you were the first one. So.
No, I don't have the password for the other one.
I was in the office for less than an hour. too.
Oh,
I get into it, internet, but- Just this one?
Top secret password. Yeah. Dragging its feet or the developer. You know that password, you're not flats or mine.
My whole body will feel vibrating. Yeah, I think I might be.
On a cell selector.
Did it work?
Yeah. I heard.
In your head.
No, it's not.
Yeah, okay, so it's gotta be true.
All right, good.
It's been better. Yeah.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Butte County Association of Governments Board Meeting of September 26, 2024. Please join me in saluting the flag of our nation. Ready, salute, pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, please call the roll.
Board Member Connolly,
Here.
Board Member Durkee, Board Member Ritter. Here. Board Member Kimmelshoe. Board Member Teeter,
Here.
Board Member Knuckles,
Here.
Board Member Reynolds, Board Member Calderon,
Here.
Board Member Pittman,
Here.
Board Member Tryon.
That's a quorum though, right?
Yep.
All right, next up to consent agenda. Would anybody up here like the board of directors like to pull anything from the consent agenda? Any public interest in the consent agenda? Is there any electronic comments today?
None.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a tie for second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Now we're up for regular agenda items for action. Number 5. Devon, adoption of 2025 federal transportation improvement program and air quality conformity determination. Woo.
Good morning, board. Draft 2025 Federal Transportation Improvement Program and Air Quality Conformity Determination has been prepared and made available for public review. The BCAG board is required to have a public hearing prior to adoption. Staff is requesting the board chair open a public hearing. If no significant comments are received, staff is requesting the board to authorize the chair to sign resolution 2425-3. This resolution also authorizes staff to make any minor technical changes to ensure state and federal approval. Since the FTIP was last presented to the board last month, no changes have been made. Some minor technical cleanup on the financial side. A couple of highlights I would like to share with the board. 25 projects are specifically identified. The board item says 283. That is 283 million. That has been changed to 294 million. Couple minor tweaks for the town of Paradise and Lumpkin Road. I think I was missing Lumpkin Road last time I performed that.
Don't miss an important.
I thought you'd like to hear that one, but other than that, no real changes. Staff held interagency consultation review group meeting with our state and federal partners. No comments have been received. Happy to entertain any questions.
Questions or comments by board members? Any public comment? We'll close public comment. Wish to the board.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Number 6, draft 2024 regional transportation plan, sustainable community strategies and supplemental environmental impact report. Public hearing, Chris.
Chris Devine is out sick, so I'll be his wingman this morning. The draft 2024 Regional Transportation Plan Sustainable Community Strategy and Supplemental Environmental Impact Report are complete and now available for a 55-day public review period. Staff today is recommending that a public hearing be held to meet state and federal requirements and to receive additional public input on the draft documents. Before opening the hearing, we'd like to review a few slides with the board, providing some basic information on the draft documents, including the main content and schedule for additional public outreach during the review period. Afterwards, we'd be happy to address any questions the board may have. I do have hard copies if anybody would like a copy of the presentation. With that, I would like to introduce, I believe we have Andrea Howard and or Allison Griffin with PlaceWorks.
Yes, that will be me, Allison, presenting. Thank you. All set whenever you are. My name is Allison Giffen. I'm an associate at PlaceWorks, and I have been assistant project manager for the RTP SES update on the PlaceWorks side. And I will be presenting today. So are we all set on the presentation? I think we can go ahead and get started. Next slide, please. All right. So I'll give a little bit of background on the RTP SES update to date. I will discuss the supplemental EIR process and the next phase of public engagement and next steps. Next slide, please. Okay, so first I'll give a little bit of background on the RTP SES. Next slide. So as the federally designated metropolitan planning organization, or MPO, and the state designated regional transportation planning agency, BCAG is required to update the RTP SES document every 4 years. And the RTP SES primarily identifies policies and a 20+ year pipeline of transportation projects and programs to maintain, manage, and improve the region's multimodal transportation system. The SES component additionally integrates sustainable land use practices into the regional transportation planning process. And then the projects, policies, and strategies in the RTP SES work together to achieve a 7% per capita greenhouse gas reduction target from passenger vehicle emissions, which is established for the BCAG region by the California Air Resources Board, or ARB, or CARB, as it's often called. Next slide, please. So the main components of the RTP SES are, these are required to be addressed based on the Caltrans RTP guidelines. And they include these elements in bold headings here. The first is the policy element chapter, which describes all components of the regional transportation system and goals, objectives, policies, and actions for the region's transportation system. Then we have the action element analysis component of the action element, which describes the transportation projects in the region, what BCAG and member agencies and jurisdictions are working on. And then the SES chapter, the Sustainable Communities Strategy, lays out a land use plan and complementary set of strategies and actions that are meant to reduce vehicle miles traveled, or VMT, and the associated greenhouse gas emissions from passenger vehicles, while also supporting other goals in the region, like preserving open space and agricultural land. And then the action element conclusion component describes the criteria and the methodology for prioritizing projects for funding, and it includes a table showing projects that are included in the RTP-SES. All projects are included in that chapter. Then the financial element describes the expected financial forecast, so expected costs of projects, and also revenues and how those are expected to change, and funding sources. And then finally, there is a civil rights and environmental justice communities analysis that analyzes the effects of the plan on low income and non-white communities and populations. Next slide, please. Oh. Let's see, can I move that? Yeah.
Slide.
Isn't it? There we go. Thank you. The RTP-SES contains a list of financially constrained projects that are within the financial projections shown and discussed in the financial element. So what are the expected revenue sources and funding sources compared to the costs of all the projects? There is a total of 1.47 billion. You can see here at the bottom in projects forecast out to the year 2045. And that is the horizon year of this RTP. This includes active transportation projects. Oh, sorry, still on that last slide there. But just to wrap up here, the 1.47 billion includes active transportation projects, as you can see up there in that list, roadway expansion projects, roadway maintenance and operation projects, and transit and passenger rail projects, and then some miscellaneous other projects. Now we can go to the next slide. So in terms of the main components of the SES primarily must identify a forecasted land use pattern for the year 2035 that, when combined with the transportation projects and policy commitments in the SES, achieves the target greenhouse gas reduction that CARB has assigned to the region, which is the 7% per capita reduction target from passenger vehicles specifically. So essentially the travel demand model, the land use pattern gets fed into the travel demand model, and then the travel demand model and the emissions factor model work together to numerically show that the land use strategy, this land use pattern, meets the target when combined with these policies and actions. So we evaluated several different scenarios to find a scenario that meets the greenhouse gas reduction target. And the SES, as I mentioned, must also include actions and policies that show additional steps to meet that target in addition to the land use plan. And this is required for CARB to approve the SES. Next slide, please. So this table here describes the main distinguishing features of the 4 scenarios that we evaluated. Each of the 4 scenarios includes land use and transportation assumptions and strategies, as well as the additional assumptions and strategies. And then at the 2 rows at the bottom there summarize the greenhouse gas reduction achieved by each scenario. And you can see that scenario 4, all the way to the right, is the only scenario that achieves the 7% greenhouse reduction target. And this is the preferred scenario that we included in the draft SES. So maybe I'll linger a couple more seconds because there's a lot on this table, but you can see all the way to the left, the sets of assumptions and strategies are categorized by land use, transportation, and then we have the additional ones right above the greenhouse gas summary. I think we can go to the next slide. Okay, so now I will touch base on the SEIR component of the RTP-SES update. This will essentially augment the SEIR that was previously certified for the 2020 RTP-SES, the previous RTP-SES. And the SEIR includes the same, this SEIR will include the same issue areas that were analyzed previously, like agricultural resources, air quality, biological resources, etc. It also includes similar impacts that were found in the 2020 RTP SES, including agricultural and other cultural resources, transportation impacts, and wildlife impacts. The SEIR evaluates 3 alternatives, which is required under law, and this is out for public review alongside the draft 2024 RTP SES. So they are both out for public review currently. Next slide. Okay, so in terms of public engagement and the upcoming round of public engagement, this public review period, well, the current round of public engagement, because it began on September 18th, when the public review periods for the draft RTP SES document began. BCAG is receiving comments on the RTP SES until November 12th. And on the draft SEIR until November 5th. Next slide, please. And so the draft documents are available for download on the BCAG website, and BCAG staff has also distributed hard copies at public libraries in Chico, Gridley, Oroville, and Paradise. There will be a virtual public workshop scheduled for Tuesday, October 15th from 4 to 5 p.m. via Zoom. The link is available on the BCAG website. And in addition, BCAG staff will be attending a variety of community events that you can see listed at the bottom of the slide. And the primary objective of tabling at these events is to provide information on the draft documents, advertise for the community workshop, and let people know that the documents are available for review and how to access them and provide comments. Next slide, please. Okay, so I will close out the presentation with some next steps. When the public review period closes in November, BCAG staff will respond to comments and integrate changes into the document as necessary. We expect the adoption of the documents will follow a second public hearing during the December 12th BCAG board meeting. And then finally, after the adoption hearing, the finalized documents will be submitted to the necessary state and local agencies as required, like Caltrans and CARB. So that is all we had for this presentation, but I'm happy to answer any questions from the board before opening the public hearing.
Questions or comments by board members?
Yes, I do have one. Regarding public engagement, who in the population is most likely to attend and present concerns or questions?
I'll take that question. Anybody who's interested in the planning or programming process, which is why we attend various community events. If we were to have specific workshops, which we are, as those required, like the Zoom, attendance is very low or minimum. That's why we'll go to Dia de los Muertos or the festivities in Oroville, the Salmon Festival Saturday, just different ones. And so we try to take it to the community. We have advertisings on the bus system, on the entire fleet, display ads, and email sign-up list for those who are interested to be engaged.
How has been the response from these events regarding some of these policies?
Well, quite honestly, I think the public gets discouraged on how long it takes to actually build a project. But I think that by far they've been very supportive of the projects, especially the bicycle and pedestrians, the safety projects, or the big Caltrans projects going through Gridley or through Oroville on Oro Dam, stuff like that. And typically they do want to help, and I encourage them to send an email, make sure they get informed and show their support. It's usually positive.
Well, I hope so. I do know from my own experience that this is sometimes very complex information to digest, and I was just wondering if there's any way to provide this information, layman terms, that people can really understand what we're talking about.
The approach I take is I ask them what's important to them in terms of transportation, and then I try to analyze that and say, well, here's a way how you can actually take your comments to the right direction, to the right city or county public works department, and how to frame their concerns.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Quick question, what's the lifespan of this document?
The RTP SES is updated every 4 years with a 20-year minimum horizon. So we do all our projections. The cities and the county have their general plans. This is our general plan for transportation. And once it's adopted in December at our second public hearing, it could be amended at any time. Of significance is our short-range programming document, the FTIP. All the specific projects have to be in this long-range plan. It usually takes a few years to get done.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Any other board comments or questions?
I just have one comment. The document is excellent, and I feel like it spells everything out really well. It is very hard to navigate from the table of contents to where you're trying to go in the document.
Electronically?
Yeah, the page numbering on it starts over with each section. So starts over at one
Yeah,
again.
that's good, that's a good
Thank-
point.
Thanks for that.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. That's good feedback.
Yeah, so if there could be a numbered page.
This 2024 RTP SES got a major overhaul from the previous ones. The content is similar, but it got a comprehensive overhaul with Placeworks doing a great job.
I'm gonna add a comment. I don't wanna muddy the waters on this in terms of, it's not gonna change anything that we are doing with this RTP or this SCS or any of the other MPOs are doing across the state. But there's a pretty significant movement to look at this whole process and how greenhouse gases are identified and measured. So it's not gonna really change what we do with this document. Everyone's gotta move forward and hit their milestones and their targets. But the next round of this is likely to look very different. The large 4 MPOs in the state, MTC, Sandag, SACOG, and SCAG, are the largest ones, referred to as the Big 4. Have all written a letter to CARB requesting a pause on this process from this point forward and take a step back, meet and look at what are reasonable things that jurisdictions and regions can do and get credit for in developing, good strategies for greenhouse gases that don't find their way very well into how CARB reviews the documents we submit. So there's kind of this disconnect going on with the people we're submitting these documents to and the realities of what we can do. So what's been happening is all the regions have been checking off these boxes and making commitments to do things that are kind of a stretch. Is it something they can really do in their community? Yet at the same time, not really getting credit for doing things like connecting sidewalks or building bike lanes, repaving roads and including, transit type stops. So it's not going to change anything any of us are doing this time around. But the next go around is likely to be very different and we're hoping much more useful.
Those are specific to the sustainable community strategy, which is a Herculean effort to demonstrate to be within our 7% greenhouse gas target. There's only so much our projects can do.
The one alternative that was chosen that our consultant showed us on the screen here, where were those listed? She said there were 4 of them that we were choosing between, of which model.
It's the actual document it's the entire SEIR. In addition to that, there's those 3 alternatives.
So what I'm asking is where did those 3 where did the 4 alternatives live before we said, oh, this is the one that we're gonna choose? Do you have any idea about that?
Those are scenarios
Right.
that are developed and modeled.
Right.
In terms of where they Like in terms of were they available in a document?
Yes, like we had our consultant looked at those and said, this is the one that best fits Butte County, this model.
Right.
And I was just curious what that,
You know, where it really resides in is a lot of bits of data that's transmitted back and forth between Brian and the consultant. Manipulating all that stuff to come up with a scenario that we define by words. So they're not really all conclusively available as some kind of a package.
thank you.
Any other questions or comments by the board? Any public comment on this matter?
Chris made a comment on the Zoom chat regarding the table of contents. He said if you click on the table of contents, it will take you directly to that chapter, section, etc. But we will look at other ways to improve readability.
All right. Oh, nope, just shut down.
Watch out.
Or not.
Mine's been popping
Honest
on and
meeting?
off.
No, I'm good, thank you.
Are you sure? I mean,
Well, I have one kind of question. So there's the
okay,
four
come on up to the
alternatives.
mic.
Yeah, I'll do that, yeah.
I mean, I'm excited. We're gonna have public comment.
Before you go, could we actually hit that slide and bring it up so we can see it?
Sure. Little questions. Yeah, so there's four alternatives. Only one of them meets the 7% target because you rounded up from like 6.59. What happens if they select a different alternative?
The board?
Yeah, is that even, I mean, that's not even on the table. Those are not really alternatives. They're just alternative considerations.
Yeah, I mean, they could.
Yeah, I was just wondering if that's.
So the scenarios we've been reviewing we've been developing for the last year. So initially we developed the first three. The first one is the old RTP. We kind of made changes as you go from right to left. There are adjustments made. Well, we got to scenario 3 and we're like, okay, we're still 3 points off. What additional changes do we need to make? So then at that point, which was about 3 months ago, we solely focused on scenario 4. That was brought to the board. And to try to make that one achieve the target to move forward with that.
So if we look at scenario 4, you can see what's been added there, our workplace EV charger incentives and e-bike purchase incentives. And those two things made obviously got us to this target. Are those reasonable projects to pursue? Maybe. But
I just bought an e-bike and is that retroactive?
so,
At that point,
I mean, those are commitments
Commitments.
commitments that you make as a region and then assess the viability and realistic, ability to actually execute. So what's that mean? Workplace EV charger incentives. And that means putting chargers at maybe the public jurisdictions that are available for public use. That's a pretty large project all in of itself. Agreements with charging people, who's going to maintain them. I know that copper in the charging hoses is now being stolen a fair amount. So is that a great solution? I don't know. Seems like it could be a headache. E-bike purchase incentives. Those are pretty good. There's nothing to prevent someone from buying a bike and turning around and selling it. So that's what I say when, we're going back to the card and saying, okay, you guys, we need to come up with some set of criteria and solutions that help us meet targets that are good, realistic projects that we can actually pursue and do. So that's how we did this. That's what Brian's saying, we've been going back and forth with this, like, okay, what else can we do? What else can we do? And then you start kind of bringing in these things that, as a public agency and being the owner or operator, it's like public restrooms. They're hard, keeping those going. Sometimes you end up just closing them because you can't really even keep up with them. So these are the types of things that got us to that 7%. So.
Yeah, I remember, I think it was the last time it was updated. It was like, we add in tens of 100 miles of new protected bike lanes and it was
Right.
given just the smallest margin.
Exactly.
Yeah,
That's
so
the other
those, like, e-bike purchase incentives is what really gave you the credit.
Yeah, versus miles of roadway available for bikes.
Yeah.
Scenario 4 Includes those additional strategies, so the workplace EV chargers, e-bike, and also if you look at the land use components, those will also change as well. Your biggest
Yeah,
change
just
are
the
gonna be
established
in terms
area.
of land use itself, the components of making changes to the land use allocation. So we added more multi-family. We put more units in the denser regions of the area. So those are your big things. Those were very small, but they got us to the 6.59, those additional strategies. Without those, we would not be able to achieve.
What about the increased transit frequency? Is that like really extreme, like light rail or something, or better bus service?
So for increased transit frequency, I believe we did a 25% increase across the board.
Which
That's
I don't
not-
know
that
if that's
doesn't
reasonable.
That's optimistic.
Yeah.
That doesn't include rails. So
Yeah.
that's just fixed route train.
I mean, however, you know, increased transit frequency is something that we need to look at as a region to be more efficient. We need more bodies per service hour move. We may be able to accomplish some transit frequency increases, 25%. I don't know, that's a tough one. But there is, I believe there's room for improvement there. So, you know, I think we're all jurisdictions, all the projects you guys are doing, projects everybody's doing, we're all trying to do the right stuff. It's just a matter of having a forum under which we develop these documents that we are able to achieve those recognition for what we're doing. So, thank you.
Well, it also meets a practicality issue. I know one locale, 5 charging stations, they're sitting there 6 months waiting for connection to the utility.
Yeah, it's complicated.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other factor. You'd think it would be easy, but
Right.
they don't have the time to put that task order out there. So that's happened in at least 3 instances I talked about right off the top of my head. So whatever your plan may be, the actual practicality of it actually working is another story.
I didn't mean to hijack that, sorry.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments by the board?
Andrea Howard from Placeworks also has additional clarification about the changes with scenario 4.
Said in addition to the EV charger and e-bike program, there are several other aspects distinguishing the preferred alternative from others, including the land use distribution.
Right. Let's vote on this.
Staff is requesting the board open a formal public hearing.
Okay. We're gonna open a hearing now. Does it remain open until next meeting, or do we close it right now?
I think you close it.
You can close it. We'll have to do another one.
A second one at,
Okay.
December.
So, any public comment? Electronically or otherwise? We're closed public. I think simple answer,
It's because of this.
so one of the issues brought up is just make sure because I get it, it happens all the time, different. Every page gets a number. And so there's double reference between chapters. Because even if you say you can click on it and it goes there, it gets confusing sometimes. I think we got the head nods up here for that one. For sure. Moving on, items for information, Butte Regional Transit Fare increase. Uh-oh.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Just 1 second.
This is bad news. We have to increase on Sarah. Is your home address listed?
Okay, we just wanted to bring an item forward, letting the board know we're beginning the process to analyze increasing fares on the regional transit. Typically, we'll look at increasing fares every 3 years, but due to COVID, we have not increased fares in over 5 years. And increasing fares is necessary to improve fare coverage and help fund increasing costs of the system. So yeah, this is just an information item. Following this meeting, we'll begin the analysis to bring forward another item, letting you know the recommended fare increase. And we'll also start our public outreach process, including a public hearing. I
Any
have a
questions?
recollection of, I don't remember how many meetings ago, but that we were actually, I don't know if it was like forgiveness or that there was a lower requirement for fare box recovery. You're nodding, so you know what I'm referencing, even though I'm
Yeah,
saying
during
it totally.
Yeah, there's two things there. One, we were able to get this item identifies what's called a blended ratio of 15.6%. But the TDA has relinquished all requirements to meet fare box ratios, period. Without saying transit should be free or coming forward saying we're gonna fund transit. So there's been a recognition that, you know, everyone who does public transit is struggling to meet what was previously minimum ratios. So until someone comes forward, whether it's state and or federal, and they say, hey, you know what, we're just gonna make public transit free. There still is this, I believe that the system should be somewhat covered by the users of the system. So whenever our costs go up, and they have gone up a fair amount this last time around, is we need to look at some reasonable way to have our users, our riders help contribute.
Right, do we notice though a correlation with as our fares go up, people stop using it or?
Last time we increased fares, which was in 2019, ridership had already kind of been slowly declining over the few years prior to that, but I can't say that increasing fares reduced ridership. We certainly get some complaints about fare increases, but like Andy said, the increase really is to improve the fare coverage. And with it increasing cost to our system year over year, especially since it's been about 5 years since we increased fares. We're just gonna start doing the analysis and see what a recommended increase might look like.
I wanted to clarify, that during COVID, they did, suspend completely the fare box recovery ratio requirements. They also made an adjustment to how we calculate them that essentially wiped out the, it looks funny anymore because we're now allowed to include in the local revenue that we apply, we're allowed to include the federal revenue that we get. So our fare box ratios sit in the 50 to 60% range when you look at it on the financial statements each year. So, yeah, we're knocking the fare box ratio out of the water these days, but we don't know when they're going to change that again. And that was a requirement, one of the changes they made for COVID, the state did. But that could change at any point. And, we've noticed before, when we wait 5 years, the increase has to be so high that it's such a shock and that there's a lot of pushback. And to answer your question about, do we see reduction in usage? Historically, and I can speak from 14 plus years or so now, we have seen reduction in usage. When the fares go up, it kind of dips and then it goes back up. People kind of get a little cranky and then they go back and start using it again. But the requirement to have to not even look at the fare box ended last fiscal year, June 30th, 2023. Started, when we're reviewing June 30th, 2024, we are going to have to meet the fare box again. Again, because of how we calculated it has changed so dramatically that we're going to meet it. But that issue aside, so the fare box requirement used to be something we really focused on because if we dipped below, we would lose the funding. But as we move forward, we still need to consider that could change, and we need to kind of keep up with the, try to keep up with it in some meaningful way.
I appreciate you saying also that the longer we wait, then it becomes a more drastic increase that really gives people some sticker shock. We've had similar issues with that at the county. trash and things of that nature, so.
You know, it's, you know, just, and the blended fare box ratio is 15% on the fixed route. Used to be, you used to get 10% on the rural and 20% on the urban, and now it's a blended 15%. And hopefully, you know, the urban was always over, I'm sorry, the rural was always over the fare box. Urban always struggled, so that was a way to, the rural fare box to help out the urban.
That's rare.
Yeah, right. Well, it was because you only had 10% requirement for the rural. So, yeah, so hopefully this, we'll take a look at what this blended looks like. But of course, you throw in the federal revenue and you can't really see. So that's why we've been in the quarterly reports showing you just the fare box coverage alone, not all the things that are allowed to be included in it, because it does give you a really good idea that, you know, we're, you know, for the most part, 10%.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you're the only one who's seen those 50, so you folks out there have seen the 50%. We've never seen that. It always has been like 10%, sorry.
Well, it shows
That would
up,
be a little misleading too.
it shows up in the financial statements, when
Right.
I do the financial statement
But when we talk
presentation.
just fare box recovery,
Yeah.
we're not including
Yeah.
federal funding. or-
It's so complicated, all the numbers.
It's
And, you know, it's like this monstrosity of an effort to just look at it and say, okay, what's this, what are we even seeing right here? And what's a good reasonable, ultimately, you gotta put some kind of a fair increase out there. Regardless of all the work that you do behind the scenes and the amount of information you provide and analyze, it's like, okay, this is the number we're gonna put out there in the public.
Supervisor Teeter.
Yeah, I've been dying to say something and, you know, I'll preface it that I don't use public transportation, so maybe that, will be negating what I'm saying, but without an objective way to substantiate a route, such as fare box ratio, it's just gonna be wide open. And so I totally support the fare box ratio. Otherwise, you know, you're gonna have places going, oh, we got one rider. Okay,
Right.
we're gonna send a bus all the way out there. And so everyone's gonna be scrambling with some subjective or no measure of substantiating that route. And so I get like, oh yeah, let's make it easier. But we're gonna be outcompeted for dollars from our urban friends because they're gonna find 3 riders somewhere that they never had the fare box ratio. That's my fear. And that's why I think getting rid of fare box ratio is dangerous grounds for rural communities. So anyway, my 2 cents.
I have a couple of questions.
Thanks, Bill.
Yeah, I like the point, but I have a different one. Why? Who created the scenario where federal funds would count towards our fare box recovery? Why did they do that? And are they going to take it away?
You know, the TDA,
I mean, what's the logic? Is there a logic behind it? Was it? Okay, enough said. All right, we need to increase fare craft. We need to take it away.
I guess very simply to a
You understand where I'm
complicated
coming
question,
from?
yeah, is the TDA basically said, you can use anything that's not TDA as local match.
Yeah, but that could be taken away.
Petitions
as
that did
easily
that,
as we
though.
got
It-
it.
You know, it wasn't even the TDA program. I don't know if they
Yeah.
talked to the
Yeah,
TDA
I don't think-
program
yeah,
and
not
the
that-
TDA.
That's just the legislative.
Yeah, the legislators decided they were gonna do that. I think it was just a way to get us over the hump, you know, and help us out during COVID. But I mean, there's really no guarantee that that would really.
But to the supervisor's point, I mean, I personally agree that if we're gonna provide a public service that historically has some level of contribution from the people that use that service, it's our obligation to preserve that requirement as best we can until, you know, a federal and or state law comes out and says, hey, we've found a way to 100% fund public transit and make it all free. You don't have to collect anything. So until that happens.
I say we increase your taxes. You pay it.
Yeah, and I don't really agree with that. I don't really.
You wouldn't
think
like
that
me to
should-
increase your
should
taxes?
happen, But that could, I mean, that.
Sorry,
could be
I'm messing
something
with
that
you.
bears out, so.
Ultimately, there is nothing free and we have a fiduciary responsibility
Yeah.
to maintain things at the best level that we can to meet the intent of the team.
Is there any public comment on this matter?
None.
We can beat this horse up. Let's put it in the barn. Move on. Annual transit asset management. Plan review and update. Amy, you're up.
Good morning, board.
Next doors to me.
Next.
So as the regional MPO and transit administrator, BCAG is responsible for creating and maintaining the transit asset management plan for vehicles. And we are regulated to complete an annual reporting to the FTA. We submit that in a narrative report in the fall, in October. So that is ready to go. And after the review this year, there was no changes to the actual plan, so there's nothing to look at there. But the review just basically like 3 main points that were dealt with. The performance targets remain as they do in the current TAM plan, for the 0% for the buses this year and 50% for the paratransit cutaway buses. The acquisition of the 6 new Freightliners had no impact on the targets for fixed route. So we're basically doing what we need to be doing. And the only other update was the change from of the designation of executive director to Andy from John. So it needs to be from John. And then no other changes or updates were needed. So this is just presented as information.
Questions or comments for you? Any public comment? Close that. You're up again. Title VI plan.
Okay, so similar scenario. As part of the Title VI Civil Rights in 1964, we have the Title VI program in place for compliance. The current board approved program is effective through May 31st, 2025, and can always be viewed online. The annual review is conducted for the period of June 1st to May 31st. And this year also, no significant changes to the actual document were needed. The annual review highlights the following. This is after kind of surveying the operations and boots on the ground staff. There's an average of about 64 encounters per month with LEP persons, which is the limited English proficient population. So in our area, that's identified as Spanish and Hmong. Communication aids were used in the course of those encounters at some points, and then the frontline staff report that those communication needs are being met with the current available tools. So basically, it's status quo with that. Their needs have been neither decreased or increased, and there's no Title VI complaints that were valid received over the last year period. So this is also just presented as information for the record.
Questions or comments by the board? Public comment on this matter?
No.
Good job, Amy. All right, Butte Regional Transit, Eli, Victoria.
Good morning, board. This is the fourth quarter and fiscal year report for the fiscal year ending June 30th. And as you can see, based off of the conversation that we just had about increasing fare box, 3 out of these 4 or none of these modes are actually meeting the coverage ratio that was set of the 15.6% or the 10% for paratransit. Ridership is up and our projections were actually fairly spot on. As you can see, urban fixed route fares and urban paratransit fares were above what we projected they were going to be, which was just a shot in the dark based off of what they were the year before. And the rural systems for fixed route and paratransits were not far off the mark at 97% and 99% of what we budgeted, of what we projected the fares would be compared to the budget. And our expenses were also fairly spot on. Ridership did improve over the last year marginally. And it seems like that things are just trudging along. There were no preventable accidents in the quarter, and there were 3 valid complaints. If you scroll to the third page. Or no, next one. Next one. You can see the ridership chart. It is still trending upwards, even with that big dip that we expect in the fourth quarter because school is out and a lot of people stop riding the bus when it's 110 outside. So that's it. Any questions?
Questions or comments? Public comment? Any items from the floor? Public comment?
No.
Yeah, public said no. Thanks for being here. We're adjourned. We'll be back here October 24th. 9 a.m. Thank you, everybody.
No, I know, I'm.
Yeah, it's got my color.
Well, actually, I got last week.
So what's up?
Yeah, your excuse.
Lady named Katie, we got.
Well,